Hello everyone, my name is Andres Søren. I've been using Ableton Push ever since it came out to do my performances and also compositions. In 2014 I became a product specialist for Ableton, and ever since I've been teaching at various schools around Europe. In this video I'm going to show you how to use Push to lay out a song, as well as lots of other tips, tricks and hacks. This can be followed by both beginners and intermediate students alike. And there are also some tips for even more advanced users. First off is how to lay out a song structure using Session View. Next is how to record this to Arrangement View and to make a song with Push. And then how these two views work together, because in the beginning it can be a little abstract. I'm going to show you some of the limitations, but also some of the opportunities of working in this way. What I will also show is how it can be used as a powerful tool to not only create a layout of a track, but also add layers of interest and detail to your compositions. This is one of the chapters of the Push Bible, a huge in-depth course I made over the course of the lockdown. It's 14 hours long with 200 lessons arranged across 10 sections. It covers everything I know, and you can find it on my website, workshop.eu. I'm sharing this part of the course in the hope that it will show the value of the Push Bible, but also in the spirit of sharing in these difficult times. This is something I can only do thanks to the support of my students, for which, again, I cannot thank you enough. So let's jump into this chapter of the Push Bible. In this section, we're looking at how we can use Push with Arrangement View, or Arrangement Mode, I suppose you could also call it, in Ableton Live. Now, to be very, very clear, there are obviously a lot of limitations. Push was never really designed to be the go-to device for using Arrangement View. There's many things that it doesn't do. But there are 2 or 3 things that it can do, and different ways that you can use it to sketch out, for example, a layout in Arrangement View by using Session View or Session Mode on Push. And then you can also then use it as a way of recording in notes in real time. And then also you can basically go through existing arrangements that you've made with Push or without, and overdub essentially, or add new layers, so extra notes or automation, or change different parameters. And I think there it's a really interesting device. So let's have a look at that. I wanted to add one extra note, which is that this part of the course I'm making available to both beginners and intermediates, because the Arrangement View functions are quite limited of Push, and it was quite difficult to split them up in some way that made sense. And that means that those of you who are more advanced and so on, you'll have to bear with me as I keep the language clear and simple. And those of you who are just starting out, if any stuff flies over your head, no problem at all. Don't worry about it. Of course, you can all pick out the parts of this course that make sense to you. I just wanted to say that so that nobody's getting too frustrated. But I think it should all be quite followable, if that's even a word, for both levels. So to change things up sonically a little bit, I have dived into the Singularities pack, which is a free pack on Ableton's website. So if you've not downloaded that already, you could do that if you'd like to load in the same clips. And it's a very sort of retro 80s sort of synth wavy sounding series of sounds. But what's really cool about it, and what really works for this next section, is that it has clips in there, and these clips are actually MIDI clips which are linked to instruments. So if you're not aware of that, and it's quite interesting once you learn it, is that you can save clips into Ableton Live, and there will be an associated instrument with those if you want. And so if, for example, I take this one here and load it in, we'll see that it loads in the clip. We're going to see it here. But if we double click on the track, we can also see that it loads in the associated drum rack. So the same for the music loops. If we come over here and take one of these. Okay, this is very cheesy. Don't worry. I mean, it's quite cheesy, but this is very cheesy. This particular one I pulled out. And you can see it's picked out an instrument here. It's grouped and you cannot open it. So that means it's probably using some devices from Ableton Live Standard or Suite, because as always, I'm using Ableton Live Intro to make sure everybody can follow. And I'll just delete these. And I've picked out four instruments basically, or four series of clips. So if we look at drum loops, we can see that you have this thing called the 709 Groove kit. And I've chosen a bunch of clips from there and put them into this blue MIDI track, so that has a few different drum samples. I've colored them appropriately to show that they're different from each other. And then I've got some clips that I found under an instrument, or under a section called Bass of Velvet, which is a very interesting title. And then here on the purple pink series of clips for pads, you won't be surprised to hear, there's this very nice sound called Gracious Fields pad, which is here. And I found a few clips there that I liked, and also edited them slightly. Some of them are in D minor or not quite, and so I just changed one or two notes just to make them work, but they basically have stayed the same. And I think actually it's on the bass clip I just changed one note. That's the main change I've really made here. And here on the last one, in the yellow track, which is the color I always give the leads, here I found this kind of very very energetic little lead sound, which you'll hear later on. So the one thing which is, I would say, a downside of working with that pack or clips in general is that if I'd want to add them from Push, it's not really possible. Because if I go to a MIDI track and I come down to packs and I go into singularities, yes, I see drums, so I can see the drum kits, okay. Yes, I can load in separate samples, and yes, I can load in the sounds, so these very sounds that I'm talking about, but it doesn't show the clips, and there's no way of getting access to that. So as you can see here, if I close this on Ableton Live, you do have clips and demo sets, but they're not loadable from Push. So here we see straight away that in some cases, you're just needing to step into Ableton Live, do some things to set it up so you can then come back to Push. And yeah, I think by now it should be clear that that's often the case. But just to make that very clear that that is part of this exercise. Also further down the line, I'll have to step over to Ableton Live, change one or two settings, and come back to Push. We cannot do it all just from Push, but we can do quite a lot. And as always, preparation. I know it sounds boring, but preparation and doing things in advance helps things run smoothly. So let's continue. So let's come out of here, and what I have done is I've taken the 8 scenes that are available to us in Ableton Live Intro, because you only have 8 scenes, you can't have more, which makes it an interesting challenge, but I like challenges, to lay out a song. So I'm layouting a song essentially from top to bottom. So this is the beginning, the intro, then we have a sort of a slight dip where the pads stop. Then we have you could say the body of the song with some slightly more energetic percussion, a bass line. The pad is doing some different things from here to there, and it continues, even more energetic drums. So the lighter the color, in this case, the more energy I feel that clip has. Then there's a kind of a breakdown, and then the lead comes in with just some percussion, and then it all comes back in. And then here we reach the outro. Fascinating to see that Push has had a little error here and is still showing 2 clips even though there's no tracks anymore. I bet if I press a note in session, they vanish. It still has tiny little glitches sometimes. And as you're probably aware, or I've already said, Push is running fully on the basis of the computer. It has no brain of its own. So that means if the computer is glitching ever so slightly, Push will also reflect that. I will say one thing about making that organization, just to show you one little tip if you're working on intro, and that is that if you're having a difficult time structuring this, because you only have these 8 scenes, what I do very often is just duplicate the tracks. So here I'm using Command D or right click and duplicate, or of course over on Push, just duplicate the track like this. And hey, let's just do this from Push here. I'm gonna shift press that track and change it to a different color. Just make it a bit lighter, for example. Here, and this pink one, what we can do is take this one and so like so. And this means that I now have a kind of a spare track for each one. So I can, if I want to delete all of these clips that are in these spare tracks. But if I decide while using Ableton Live Intro or while using Push that I'm like, I do like this clip, but I want to try another one in its place, what I can do is just mute all of these tracks. So these are basically kind of just placeholders that don't do anything, but I can copy things. I can copy this one here. I know that it used to be there, and I can then put a different one in its place and listen to that instead. So if I launch this whole scene, I will hear this with this drum instead of that drum. Can be a little trick to work around the limitation of the number of scenes. I will undo that and I will delete these tracks. And we should be back to normal. Just zoom back out of Ableton Live. So let's listen to how these sounds. I'll try to show the clips where I can. So let's just launch this first one. Get ready to listen to something pretty retro. So the pad is just this kind of intro, and then we're building up in some kind of energy, as you can hear. There's a bit of a Stranger Things vibe here now and then. Maybe not just now, but later. See what I mean? Would be nice if the bass would follow the pads, but I'm not going to get into detail of changing everything right now. We move forward to the more energetic drums. I actually really like it. And then we have the kind of breakdown, new pads. So there we'll play with the filter and so on later on. And then we're going to bring in this lead. Get ready. Yeah. Doesn't quite fit, but it works for the purpose of this exercise. And then we're going to go back and bring it all back in. And then for the outro, again, somewhere to play with the filters probably, and then stop it. And I actually stopped this clip here, this pad, on the first pad, so not the last one, and that sounds quite nice. I'll show you what I mean. So it launches again. So just stop it there, because I find that it resolving itself is the nicest way of it ending. So yeah, that's the rough layout. And actually, honestly, I had some fun going in there into this pack and finding stuff that would work together. And the instruments in there are actually pretty cool, some of them. So and some of them are, as I've said, from or clearly using some parts from the standard and suite parts. So you might find some instruments there, that you can use in your own productions. So the next step is to talk about how Push interacts with Arrangement View. And as I've already said, it's very, very simple. There's not a lot of things it can do. You can access the Arrangement Record button, and I'll explain what I mean by that if you're not aware, by either pressing record if you're already looking at the arrangement view on Ableton Live, or by holding down Shift and record. I'll explain how that works as well in a moment. So let's just clear up this aspect of the two recording buttons. So if I come in here, you can see here is the Session View Record button. That's the one you recognize from Push, and that's one we use whenever we're recording anything into the Session View. If, however, you're recording something into the Arrangement View, then it's the Arrangement Record button here, the solid circle. And this one we can access from Push if we hold down Shift and record, if we're looking at the Session View. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So if I hold down Shift and record, you can see it activates the Arrangement Record. And if we'd come over to Arrangement View, you can see it's now started recording in here. Now, if, however, we were already looking at the Arrangement View and we're looking at Push at the same time, if I press record, normally it's just going to activate Arrangement Record and it won't activate session record. So basically, the record button on push will always activate the record button that is related to the view you're looking at. So if you're looking at arrangement view, one press will activate arrangement recording. If you're looking at session view, one press will activate session view recording. If for one reason or another you want to activate the recording mode that you're not looking at on screen, then it's shift and record. I hope that's clear. It does take a moment to get used to it, but it's just a kind of a shortcut to give you access to it if you need it. To stop recording, I can of course either just press on record here or just press play, and that will stop everything. Over in Ableton Live, I just want to do a couple of things, however, before I get going. And let's take these tracks, and I'm going to hold down Shift and select the last one and just make them quite a bit bigger so we can see what we're doing. And the other thing I'm going to do is to turn on the automation lane view. So if I press this, that means that whenever I record any changes to any parameter, they will appear here. You can see it changes the color of things somewhat, but if it's on, we get to see even more information. You can also access this with the A key on your keyboard. And if for some reason that's not working, it could be you still have your virtual keyboard on, and sometimes also uses the A key for inputting notes. So it's just a little note for you there. The next shortcut is Shift and Play. We'll bring the playhead on the arrangement view all the way back to the beginning. So Shift and Play, and it comes all the way back to the start. Now I'm gonna, before I go any further, give you some of the bad news, because that's about the extent of the controls of the arrangement view on push. There is no fast forward, no rewinds, no, not even a shortcut to play back exactly from the place where you stopped, which is just crazy, I think, and could easily have been done by just giving us select and play as an option. You do have that on the keyboard, which many people don't know, which is that if you are playing somewhere over here and you press the space bar, the default is you press the space bar and it goes back to wherever you last selected. So what I mean by that is this selector here. If, however, you're playing and you press stop, the next thing you can actually do is just hold down Shift and space, and then it continues from exactly the place it left off, which is super handy. I don't know why that doesn't exist on push. Many people have talked about it. Maybe one day it will be implemented. It doesn't seem like a big jump for me. So yeah, I just want to make that clear before we go any further. But I do have some ways of getting around that, and they involve using the user mode and mapping a few things, which might be a completely new thing for you, but I'll get into that in a moment. And yeah, I think can be a handy shortcut if you really want to try to be using arrangement view as much as possible with push. But before I do that, I want to explain one key concept that you need to be aware of in order to move between session view and arrangement view comfortably. And it does take a moment to absorb. So if you've not come across it and it seems frustrating in the beginning, don't worry, it's really normal. And it's to do with the fact that Ableton Live has got the session view and the arrangement view, and that yes, you can play them both at the same time. Yes, you can even record into them at the same time, but there are some caveats and there are some things you need to keep in mind, such as when you want to play only one or the other. At the end of the day, it's actually really simple, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you think about the fact that we have these 4 tracks, which we can see over in arrangement view, but also if I come up here in session view, the thing you just need to remember, which makes it very simple, is that you can only have one thing playing in one track at any time. So by that I mean you could have this clip playing here in session view, but that means you cannot play anything on the track over in arrangement view. They will cancel each other out. So you could, if you want, play three clips here on this track, this track, this track, but then, for example, the arrangement view, be listening to that one. So how this works is that if I launch, for example, let's just launch this one here with these 3 clips here, that means that nothing is going to be playing here. If, however, we would want to play the arrangement, there's this button here it's called the back to arrangement button. If you click that, that means that anything that's here will be activated and will play here and will not play there. So let's give a very concrete example of that. So if I make sure I'm in arrangement view, and let's come back to the beginning of the arrangement, and I'm just going to stop these clips here. I am going to press record. We're in arrangement view. That means it's going to start recording there. And I will launch these clips, and you'll see them record into the arrangement. And I'll now stop them and press play. Now, if we come over to the arrangement, what's interesting is it's all grayed out. And if I come in and I try to play it, we don't hear anything. That's because the last thing that we did was launch clips in the session view. That means that Ableton Live assumes we're focused on that view, we're focused on what those clips are doing in that view, and it turns off everything in the arrangement view. If we want to hear what's going on in the arrangement view, we need to use that button, the back to arrangement button, and if I press it here, you can see what happens. They all light up. And now if I would come in here and play them, they play back. And what we can do here for now, just to show you how this is working, is I'm going to move the loop brace here. I'm going to turn loop on and just play this round and round. Come over to session view. And if, for example, now I choose a different drum clip, you can see that it's playing here. And this one has grayed out. Can do the same with the bass. This one is now grayed out. And if we want to reactivate everything in the arrangement view, it's the back to arrangement button. So it's just basically one track can play one thing at any one time. And that thing could be sitting in the session view or it could be sitting in the arrangement view. And you can have a mix of them playing, or you can also even record clips into session view while also recording things into arrangement view. It's a really powerful setup. It's why Ableton Live is what it is, and also probably why why it is so popular. But it takes a moment just to wrap your head around that concept. So I would recommend just fiddling around with that if you're not familiar with it, and getting to grips with how that works. It doesn't make things super complicated, but you need to be aware of the back to arrangement button, and you'll see it light up in orange here, or also down here in session view. And yeah, it's very, very important that you have that in mind going forward. So what I'm going to propose next is to map this button to push so that you can all grab it whenever you want, because it's quite interesting button to have, and there's some others I'll show you later which are also interesting. So this is a bit of a rabbit hole, to say the least, and if you're not interested, just skip forward to the next part. But what I'm going to do is basically use the user mode so that we can map this back to arrangement button to one of the other buttons that I'm not using on push. So the first thing we need to do is actually come into Ableton Live, and that is to go to Preferences and come over here and go to the MIDI tab. And here you'll see, and probably it'll look more like this on your screen, is that you have these two MIDI ports for Ableton Push called the user port. And the user port is the one that gets activated when you turn on the user mode. So I press this, you can see the user mode, and this is all MIDI mappable. It doesn't behave as you'd expect it all of the time, and I'll get into that into different, probably a different course actually, because it's quite a topic. But it does let you do some things, and to enable the mapping of this mode to things in Ableton Live, you need to turn all of these things on here, because it means that these buttons can now be assigned to things within Ableton Live. So once these are on, you don't need sync, just turn these on here, and we come out of there. What we can now do is go to MIDI mapping mode. We're already in user mode. That's important that you're already in it, because otherwise what's going to happen is we're going to end up accidentally mapping the user button, which we don't want to do. And then you go into MIDI mapping mode, which is up here, or Command M. and we just zoom out, and everything which is blue can be mapped to whichever controllers you're using. So I'm going to come over to Arrangement View here, and to the Back to Arrangement button I want to map. And I want to map it, so I'm just clicking it once, and then I'm going to map it to this button just beside User. So I press that, and you can see that it's been mapped here. So now if I come out of MIDI mapping mode here, come out of user mode, and let's make this so that we can actually see it become visible. So I'm going to play this section here and then launch some clips here. Well, let's launch some different ones so we hear something different, okay? And now on push, I can press user and I can just press that button and it'll activate the Back to Arrangement button. So you can see we're back to the arrangement. And one very neat trick is, coming out of user mode, I'm going to redo what I did, is that the user button is also momentary. So if I hold it down and let go, it comes in and out automatically of the two modes, the live mode, this one, and the user mode. That means that you can hold it down, just tap this one, activate it, let go, very fast. So 1, 2, 3, out. Very, very, very useful. And I can hear your brains working as I speak, because that means that you can essentially use user as a momentary button and map all sorts of different things to other things within push. And I do plan to get into that, but I won't discuss it right now because I'm still working out exactly how, and also talking to some people out there how best to create possibly a script and stuff. Anyway, watch this space, or maybe if we're lucky, we'll find it within this course. But what this means, we now have, via the user mode, control of the Back to Arrangement button. So far so good, and I can't help but just make one other little observation about this task, and something that I actually really like, which is that using the session view as a way of structuring a song, I actually really like a lot. And it's very limited, and that's exactly why I like it. And I've used it literally to make whole songs, which were literally 8, 12, maybe 16 scenes long. And the reason I like it so much is because it really forces me into some decisions which are about what comes where, and to keep things simple and to do the best I can with the material that's in there, and even come up with some creative solutions to, wait, how do I make a little fill at the end of essentially an empty clip just before going into one? Well, you record a clip and you just put the stuff at the end. You'll see what I mean if you ever do it. And I really like that limitation. So there's just a little sort of brackets as to why there's this bonus of working in this way. And I actually think that structuring a song in session view can be more satisfying than doing it in arrangement view sometimes. It has some downsides, or let's say, they're not downsides, but it's a bit more tricky to do some stuff or have an overview of things. But you might find that it works better for you for getting something done and finished than working in arrangement view, because we all get blocked by different things. Anyway, that's just a little addendum. Well, they usually come at the end, so this is a sort of in-between addendum or something. So next up, we're gonna record the whole arrangement into Ableton Live. So I'm gonna come back over to Ableton Live, Command A to select everything and delete. Make sure I turn off the loop brace, which I'm just extending for no particular reason here. It just looks neater to me. And come back to push, shift and play to move to the beginning of the arrangement. And then I'm going to start recording, and I think I'll let it play for just one bar before launching it, just have a little bit of space for when I relaunch it later on. So records, and let's get going. So, in fact, I'll wait until it gets up to 5, because then I'll see where I have got 4 bars. 4th bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we get going. just imagine us in an off-world colony or something. Next section. And then we're going to come into the breakdown. Here's where we're going to want to do some stuff with the filters, as I said. Can let it go for another section of 4 bars. And then our little lead comes in, cheeky lead. This is some kind of cheerful space alien that's popped into our mix. I've let it play again. I might come to regret that. And then we go back into this main section with everything. And even though that's obviously really nice, let's do the outro. And remember, I only want the first chord of this clip, so I'll get ready to stop everything with Shift and Stop clip. And usually I just let it record a little bit longer, especially if I've changed anything with automation, but I'll get into that later, just to make sure it's all neat and tidy. Then just press play to stop. So it's now been recorded in. How do we play it back? Well, right now you'd have to go back to Ableton Live usually, but because we're so smart, we can hold down user, press that button, and back to arrangement is turned on. So let's press play, and we can see it coming up here, and 4 bars of waiting. So that works exactly as we'd expect. Very good. So you've made it halfway through this chapter, but there's much more. The next part includes a download of the live set so that you can see exactly how it turns out and follow along. I also show you how to hack Push in order to create arrangement shortcuts to hop around your song structure using Push. I also show you why Session View is so good for creating song foundations and structures. Going deeper, I show you how to record extra ideas such as fills and percussion as builds and drops, and how you can use Push to layer automation to create interest and variety in your arrangements. Lastly, I show you my dream setup for working with session and arrangement views with Push. If you'd like to continue and learn all of those things, please check the link that's coming up in just a moment. I'll keep the second part of this chapter available for free for as long as possible. If you found this video useful, please do share it in any way you feel comfortable. It really does help a lot. I hope that you have been converted or have at least seen the light. It's not a cult, I promise. Well, maybe a little bit. On screen, you'll see a link to check out the rest of this chapter, and also somewhere in the description or comments of this video. This was Workshop. I'm André Søren. You are still you. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care out there.